I'm going to need you to stay close to me this morning because I'm wading into territory that is incredibly fraught and incredibly difficult. I would suggest at the outset, possibly more so for a man than a woman, because women tend to be less shocked by the depravity of men than some men are, which is, I suppose, just a historical fact. If you want me to shock you at the outset of this conversation, I would probably start with the fact that in this country, in the United Kingdom, it was not possible for a man to be guilty of a rape upon his wife until 1991. That's when the law changed. Prior to that, going right back to 1822, when a barrister called John Frederick Archbold published the mammoth legal tome Pleading and Evidence in Criminal Cases, it was the case that a husband, and I quote now, cannot be guilty of a rape upon his wife. And that was reversed, as I say, in not until 1991, when you were quite possibly alive and even perhaps married. I mention that because of the shock that you feel when you read of, or you hear of in your news bulletin, a 20-year sentence handed to Gisèle Pelicot's ex-husband for presiding over a catalogue of crime that still beggars belief. It still is impossible to process. The sheer scale of these disgusting crimes. 50 men. I mean, what's even the verb? This is what I mean by needing you to help me out today, because I don't have the vocabulary. You say lured. It sounds inadequate, the word, doesn't it? They weren't lured. They were desperate to get involved in the rape of a woman, absolutely incapable of giving any form of consent. But the element of, and the other reason, and the reason I mentioned being a man, is I suddenly thought literally just on the way through that door, as I walked into the studio a few moments ago, I suddenly thought, well, you can't. Look, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the point about today's conversation. But how much applause can you offer to this woman without making it sound like all women who've been victims of sexual crimes should be as brave as her? Do you see what I mean? So, I mean, for me, there was an incredible moment in this trial, written about very powerfully by the BBC journalist Andrew Harding, but the moment when she took off her sunglasses. It may not seem like a big moment, but it is. What one of her lawyers, Stéphane Babineau, points out that a point came where she felt she no longer needed to protect herself. She'd previously been wearing these sunglasses, in the words of her lawyer, her criminal lawyer, to hide her eyes, to protect her intimacy. So there's several levels of self-revelation here, because she was entitled to anonymity. The entire case could have unfolded in camera, in secret. But she chose to have her suffering laid bare in public. And I don't know how surprised you were by the speed with which this decision cloaked her in an unprecedented dignity. And that is confusing to me, because it's a dignity born of a tradition that shames victims in these kind of cases. It is shame that explains the existence of the rule by which you are entitled to anonymity. You historically don't want people to know that you've been raped. Look, when I started in this job, I'd still take calls, and the way things are going, they'll probably start coming back again soon, from people who thought, and this would include women, I have to tell you that, people who thought that the way a woman dressed was pertinent to the fact that she had been a victim of rape. You'd have High Court judges commenting on the length of a woman's skirt in a rape case, as if somehow there's a provocation, a temptation that mitigates the violence of the act, that mitigates the crime. So the shaming of the victim is absolutely endemic to sex crimes throughout history. I mean, I've got so many questions bubbling away in the back of my mind this morning. The first one is why? And part of the answer came, I think, when Nick, just towards the end of his programme, turned his attention to Sharia law. You remember that the role religion has played historically in not just rendering women second-class citizens, but also robbing them of sexual agency. You know, Catholic Church, I think, still has a problem with contraception, which, you know, consigns women potentially to a lifetime of childbirth and child rearing, robs them of independence and autonomy. Same is true, of course, of religious attitudes to choice, to personal choice, bodily autonomy in the context of terminating pregnancies. It's so knitted into our culture that we almost fail to notice it until these extraordinary moments occur, until these extraordinary moments bubble up. Hand on heart, how shocked are you to learn that a man could not be guilty of raping his own wife until 1991? That's born of biblical doctrine. That's born of religious bigotry. It's born of teachings that render women second class, you know? I'm thinking of a story, I think by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, when a story opens with bed sheets being held up in a village square after the first night of a marriage to determine whether or not the bride has bled because her virginity is of such epic value. Victims of rape become unmarriageable historically. You see that throughout culture and history and, of course, religion. And that's why the first question is, why? And I don't think, you know, sometimes I say slightly in jest, I don't think men should ring me today. But I'm not saying it in jest today, because I don't think it's a question we can or even should try to answer as men, but it's not the only question I'm going to ask. I would like you to tell me why you think it is so, not why you think it is, why it is. And I think we need to do it. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't send a message to every woman who's been raped or every woman who is ever raped, that if they are not as... See, I use the word brave, I'm calling you unbrave. If you do not conduct yourself in the way that Gisèle Pelicot has conducted herself, then you are inferior, you are not... Do you see my problem? I mean, that maybe that's just me, because I have this weird job and it's not necessarily an intrinsic or a crucial part of the entire issue, the entire process. But that's what I want you to start with today, 0345 6060 973, because the question is I think one that it's been asked before, it's been answered before, but I'm not sure it can be asked or answered too much. So why is her decision not just to waive her anonymity, but to walk into court every day? To walk into court every day, to be in the room when the video evidence of the crimes committed against her was played to the jury, to the courtroom. Why is that so significant? I think that's a safe word to use, don't you? Powerful, extraordinary. A word I use far too much, and it's on days like today when you are discussing things that are truly and inarguably extraordinary that you realise how much you overuse the word. Why? Why is it so special? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. That's question number one. And question number two is slightly different. How do you think she's done it? Do you think her age is relevant? And by that I simply mean wisdom. The wisdom that can come with age. To process something like this, a discovery like this in your 20s or your 30s would be different, I think. I don't know. Perhaps you've lost your idealism a bit. The older you get, the more you realise how rotten human beings can be, up to and including, in this poor woman's case, your own husband and neighbours. So I don't quite know how she's done that. And again, I wonder whether a man can get his head around the scale of the challenge that she has faced, the scale of the achievement that she has made. Some of the footage, some of the story is, I mean, just magnificent. And I use that word very carefully. The way she is applauded into court and out of court every day by women, the way that there are graffiti across the capital of France applauding her. And then I'm back to the paucity of my own vocabulary, which can be my third question. Applauding her what? Because it's more than courage, isn't it? It's more than bravery. And those words are unhelpful in a way, as I've tried to explain, because they sort of pass judgment on women who don't waive anonymity, or women who don't want to see their attackers in court. What is it that she's done? What are the right words to use to describe what she's done? Revolutionary seems close. So, why is this such a significant moment? 0345 6060 973. How do you think she did it? What do you think the internal dialogue was? What is it that she has identified and determined to do? What exactly has she done that is so special? 0345 6060 973. And I mean, this is a slightly silly question, partly prompted by my obsession with words and vocabulary, but what word do we use to describe? What words, plural, do we use to describe what she's done? What is it that she... Well, I mean, you know, I like this already from Helen. By walking into court every day and waiving her anonymity, Gisèle is announcing to the world, I am strong, I am not a victim, I have done nothing wrong, and I applaud her so much for that. Another text says she has exercised her right to demand equality. Kerry says empowerment and solidarity play a crucial role. Yeah, I mean, that they're all perfect, aren't they? They all fill the space that I'm trying to describe to you. Society she hasn't done, says Louise. For once, she hasn't done what society expects and hidden away in shame and fear. By taking off her glasses, she has metaphorically uncloaked the utterly horrific nature of rape. She signifies every single woman that has had a similar experience. She is them and they are her. Every single woman knows her pain, her fear, and her shame. Gosh. So those two questions really, and then my own curiosity about language, which you're meeting quite powerfully. What has she done here? That is, what is it she's done that is so spectacular? How do you think she's done it? What do you think the thought processes were? And how would you describe it? The third question and the first question are quite similar, but they're subtly different. But you can answer 1, 2, 3, or none of the questions that I've posed. To do any of those things, you need to call 0345 6060 973.